Chapter 2084. It's a pity that the god didn't go through the thunder tribulation. Jiang Tian looked a little regretful. Without the thunder tribulation, it was like iron that couldn't be turned into steel without high temperature, forging, and cold extraction. As long as the limit was exceeded, the god and the divine treasures would become unstable and eventually collapse. At this time, Jiang Tian's god had reached the limit. If he continued to fight, the cracks in the god's god would go deep inside and damage its origin. The loss would be immeasurable. You can either submit to me and become my puppet, or I can burn your god and let you die miserably. There is no third option. At this moment, it had the appearance of the demon emperor. Considering that it had inherited the demon emperor's memory and consciousness, it could be said that it was the demon emperor with reduced strength. As if it had seen through Jiang Tian, it was full of sarcasm and showed an anthropomorphic smile. It was full of confidence as if Jiang Tian was already a turtle in a jar and could be controlled by it. Human little worm, lowly ant, you should feel honored to be able to become this emperor's residence and bear this emperor's consciousness. The demonic emperor's tone was very arrogant and condescending. It was as if taking over Jiang Tian's body was the best gift to Jiang Tian. I've only done things in my life. I've only fought against the heavens. I've never submitted or surrendered without a fight. Jiang Tian's eyes were like torches with golden flames burning with an indestructible aura. I even dare to fight against the giants of the 9 heavens, not to mention an octopus like you. I'd rather die than become someone else's puppet. Today, I'll kill you. Even if I fall into samsara forever, I'll never give up. At this moment, Guhi was so anxious that he stomped his feet. Why aren't you running? Do you still want to fight? The gods are almost burned out. How can you win? It's like hitting a stone with an egg. However, Tai Xuanzi sighed and said, it's too late to run now. I'm afraid you don't have much of a chance. At this moment, he and Jiang Tian were both within the Nephilim Emperor's attack range and were firmly locked onto by the Nephilim laws. How could it be easy to escape? Moreover, Jiang Tian had almost exhausted all of his energy, and his strength was not even 1/10 of his original strength. Fine. Then I'll pierce through your divine soul and occupy your body. The Devil Emperor put on a helpless and mocking expression, as if he were facing a naughty junior. Then, he suddenly pressed the center of his eyebrow with his right hand that was full of scales and pointed at Jiang Tian. 9 Hell's Soul Falling Finger. What? He actually used such a killing move. Hearing this, Tai Xuanzi's face suddenly changed drastically, and then he stomped his feet as a look of determination appeared on his face. Forget it. It's rare to see such a genius in the human race. Since I've run into him, I can't just ignore him. Using my old bones in exchange for a seed to become an immortal for the human race, it's worth it. Before he could finish his sentence, he suddenly soared into the sky and opened his right hand to block out the sun. He stood in front of Jiang Tian and shouted angrily, "Evil demon, don't hurt the human race's prodigy." What? Was his finger actually so powerful? Even Tai Xuanzi, a divine return-to-void-level cultivator, is attacking. Seeing this scene, Guhi was shocked and couldn't believe it. 9 Hell's Soul Falling Finger. Then, the Devil Emperor spoke in the ancient and obscure demonic language. The evil, filthy finger, which was wreathed in devil chi, looked ordinary at the moment it stretched out. But halfway through, the black light surged and grew bigger out of nowhere. In the end, it was like a heavenly pillar that stretched across the sun and the moon, extremely huge, at least 10,000 feet long. Looking down from the sky. A finger stretched out from the sky and pressed down, as if it could crush everything. Tai Xuanzi's face changed drastically, and he used all his strength to block it with his giant hand. This 9 Hell's Soul Falling Finger was both a Dharma power attack and a spiritual attack. One's Taoist heart could be easily corrupted by it, and it could distort one's personality and make one's extreme views degenerate into a world-destroying evil demon. Sure enough, the moment he saw that finger, Guhi's expression changed drastically, and his Taoist heart was shaken. That finger was demonic, evil, degenerate, and bloody, and it also made people feel an unimaginable hatred. He hated the heavens for being too fair, hated the earth for carrying things, hated people for being happy, hated things for not being his own, hated karma for being troublesome, hated the cruelty of fate, and hated that he didn't kill enough. In the end, what was produced was an extreme feeling of weariness and self-abandonment, and he couldn't wait to die so that he could be free. In the midst of hatred, Guhi's thoughts were all messed up. His personality seemed to have split into 12,960, and each of them was in conflict with each other. He painfully held his head and spat out a mouthful of blood. 12,000 voices rose and fell one after another in his mind, arguing with each other. It was chaotic like a pot of boiling porridge, and he couldn't bear it at all. Not to mention him, when Jiang Tian first arrived at the evil-infested ridge, he only felt the filthy intent of the devil's claws from afar, and he was almost lured into the devil's path. Not to mention, the Devil Emperor was using a spiritual attack technique now. As a human, I'm very sorry. Stop arguing, let's die clean. Guhi abruptly took out a saint weapon and slashed it toward his open divine treasure. Not only him, but Tai Xuanzi's Tao heart was also tainted by the 9 serenities falling god finger. Although his divine soul didn't fall into the devil's path, he couldn't control himself and fell from the sky like a bird with broken wings. Tai Xuanzi tried his best to look and saw that Jiang Tian was only a few hundred meters away from the falling god finger. 1,000 feet long giant finger pressed down from the sky. Like a demonic mountain pressing down, it was unstoppable and swallowed thousands of miles. And Jiang Tian's original body was as small as a small egg under the demonic mountain. Sigh. The ending is set, and it can't be changed. This is fate. Tai Xuanzi's eyes were full of despair, and he gave up attacking. If he couldn't block the falling god finger, Jiang Tian could only die. However, at this moment, you want to compete with me in spiritual attacks? Very well, I'll let you see what a real demonic spiritual attack is. However, until now, Jiang Tian was still fearless. The divine soul of the prison-suppressing fiend, come out. As Jiang Tian shouted. A peerless fiend god stepped out of his mind and became bigger in the wind. A demonic mind power that was 10 times more powerful than the 9 serenities falling god finger surged out of the unparalleled demonic god and Jiang Tian. Roar! The divine soul of the prison-suppressing fiend was 100,000 feet tall, wearing a set of dark purple armor, as if it were holding the stars and supporting the world. On the armor, there were extremely sharp bone spikes protruding, exuding a terrifying demonic aura. The demonic aura was so dense that it collapsed the void and made people dizzy just by looking at it. On top of its head, 2 long horns curved and kept going up, as if they could poke 2 holes in the sky, and countless thick thunder dragons moved back and forth. Behind its back, 9 demon heads, snake heads, ghost heads, dragon heads, surrounded by black smoke, white bones, or covered with scales crawled out from the coiled muscles. They roared violently and savagely, and they were like numerous arms that danced in the air. They rolled about endlessly and changed in an instant. Under the contrast of the tall divine soul of the prison-suppressing fiend, the arrogant demon king was dumbfounded, feeling as if he was a chicken egg under Mount Tai, unable to withstand a single blow. Chapter 2085. The hell-suppressing demon opened his bloody mouth and sucked in the 9 hell soul falling finger like a whale swallowing a cow. Seeing this, both Guhi and Tai Xuanzi were dumbfounded, unable to believe their eyes. Jiang Tian had a demonic divine soul, one that was even stronger than the demon king's divine soul. This was simply unbelievable. Oh no! It's the demon soul of the prison-suppressing demon. The demon king's expression changed and he was about to run away. The demon king had a long lifespan and was the ancestor of the ancient demon race. The demon body of the prison-suppressing demon was one of the strongest demonic physiques. It was almost as strong as the demon king. The demon soul of the prison-suppressing demon was the most devouring demonic soul, which was on par with the demon king's divine soul. But the problem was that the demon king wasn't the real demon king. It was just a shed demon king's claws and a remnant soul. His soul energy was only 1% of what it used to be. The demon soul of the prison-suppressing demon had been nourished by Jiang Tian countless times and was at its peak condition. How could the demon king defeat Jiang Tian in terms of soul energy? Therefore, he wanted to give up on attacking Saint Origin World and enter the real demon realm through the dimensional tunnel. However, Jiang Tian chased after the demon emperor like a shooting star. He extended his hand and grabbed at the demon emperor. The demon soul of the prison-suppressing demon imitated Jiang Tian's movements. Its giant hand covered in scales covered the sky. It seemed to be able to grab the sun and moon and devour the universe. The vast soul energy was full of demonic qi. It pierced through 1,000,000 miles of space and reached for the demon king's head and mind. No! The demon king's eyes widened. The ancient demon armor and helmet on his body shone with black light and demonic qi. He tried his best to resist, but he couldn't stop the demon soul of the prison-suppressing demon. Roar! Roared the devil emperor. Condensing all his energy into his devil sword, he sent a 30,000-meter-long beam of sword light toward Jiang Tian. It was clearly prepared to trade injury for injury, to trade life for life, hoping to injure Jiang Tian's foundation and force the hell-suppressing demon god to retreat. In this way, the hell-suppressing demon god's soul was, after all, just a part of his soul. Without Jiang Tian's control, his fighting spirit would drop and his crisis would be resolved. However, in the face of this sword strike that could wound a return to Void Stage great sage, Jiang Tian completely ignored it. He only used all his strength to thrust his big hand forward. The hell-suppressing demon's soul did the same. Crack! His hand, which was enshrouded in devilish aura and imbued with unimaginable laws of mind, easily broke through the ancient devil's helmet and stabbed into the devil emperor's head as if it were tofu. Then, he grabbed the devil emperor's god's soul in the devil emperor's sea of consciousness and squeezed it gently. Bang! The divine soul that condensed the vast spiritual power of the devilish emperor was directly crushed into pieces by the devilish claws. The remaining consciousness of the demon emperor immediately let out an earth-shattering roar. This roar was filled with unwillingness, confusion, and anger. However, with its divine soul shattered, it no longer had a chance to revive. Besides, the hell-suppressing demon's divine soul was known to be the best at devouring. How could it be given a chance to breathe? Whoosh! The hell-suppressing demon's divine soul looked up, opened its mouth and sucked in. The abyssal mouth was like a black hole with an unparalleled suction force. The fragments of the devil emperor's divine soul were sucked into the giant mouth from all directions and were absorbed in the blink of an eye. The body of the devil emperor's claw stood quietly, as if it had an indestructible power. But without its divine soul, it was like a motorcycle that had lost its driver. It could only become a dead object. At that moment, all the ancient demons turned into statues. They couldn't believe this result. Many demon generals fell to their knees. Their faces were ashen as if they had lost their parents. In the world, only Jiang Tian was left standing, bathed in blood and surrounded by a dazzling aura, like an undefeatable god of war. The devil emperor's claw was dead. It came from the remains of the devil emperor, inherited his bloodline and consciousness, and even carried his devil weapons and devil treasures. It was a terrifying being that was strong enough to fight against the 9 major celestial sects. The devil emperor's divine soul was crushed and devoured by Jiang Tian's devil emperor's divine soul. Although the body of the devil emperor's claw was still there, the devil emperor's claw's divine soul had been destroyed. However, the demonic soul had already been shattered. Just like a mortal with brain death, there was no chance of recovery. Countless warriors of the ancient demons looked pale and couldn't believe it. The only surviving ancient demon commanders also felt like they had fallen into a nightmare and their faith had collapsed. Even Gu He sucked in a breath of cold air. Damn, he really killed the devil emperor's claw. That's the remains of the ancestor of the ancient demons. It has the power to overturn a part of the universe. Gu He was really shocked at this time. Not even Tai Xuanzi, who was a powerful figure on a high-level continent, had the ability to do that. In fact, Tai Xuanzi was also furious at this time. He rushed to Jiang Tian and roared. Are you crazy? Why do you have to fight to the end? Don't you know that both sides will suffer? Tai Xuanzi was going crazy. In the last hit, Jiang Tian was also seriously injured. The devil sword directly cut Jiang Tian's divine weapon in half and then cut into Jiang Tian's shoulder, almost cutting Jiang Tian's body and killing Jiang Tian. In order to resist this sword, Jiang Tian burned his divine power again at the last moment. He resisted 30% of the power of the devil sword. Otherwise, his divine treasure would have been pierced. Even now, countless black lights that represented the Devil Emperor's divine power were still lingering and shining on Jiang Tian's wound. Even if he had reached the phenomenal level of the chaotic divine body, he was powerless in the face of the demonic emperor of the barbaric era and the attack of the supreme devil weapon. More importantly, Jiang Tian had fought for too long and used too much of his origin. Only 1/10 of his divine power was left. Jiang Tian looked at Tai Xuanzi, who was red in the face and stamping with anger, with a complicated expression. He was a warm and straightforward person. Although his words weren't very nice, they were for Jiang Tian's good. When Jiang Tian met him in his previous life, it was several hundred years later than in this life. But at that time, Tai Xuanzi still treated him with sincerity. It's worth it to kill him, no matter how big the loss is. Jiang Tian said calmly. Then, Jiang Tian cast a Dharma art, ignoring Tai Xuanzi's hesitant look. Sizzle. The divine soul of the soul-devouring fiend turned into a black light and quickly went into the mind of the demonic emperor. A moment later, the last bit of divine soul in the demonic emperor's body was also devoured and disappeared. Then, the body of the demonic emperor gradually shrank and changed to the same size as the divine soul of the prison-suppressing fiend. The divine soul of the prison-suppressing fiend had taken over his body and merged with it. Under the incredulous gaze of Tai Xuanzi, Gu He and the demons, Jiang Tian opened his divine treasure and absorbed the prison-suppressing fiend. Boom! There seemed to be another divine soul in his body. From now on, I'll call you the second divine soul, or the prison-suppressing fiend emperor divine soul. Jiang Tian showed a gratified smile. Suddenly, his energy rose and even surpassed his previous peak state. It didn't stop, as if it would never stop. Chapter 2086. Seeing this, Tai Xuanzi immediately understood. You've added another god to the divine treasure. In the future, even if one of the gods dies, the second god can still support you in the battle. It was like a car with two engines. If one of them exploded, the other could still support the car. Although Tai Xuanzi understood, he had never seen or heard of such a method. He was so shocked that his face turned pale. When you reach the void return level in the future, you'll even form two virtual skies, one simulating the human world and the other simulating the demon world. This is too terrifying. And, the two different virtual skies operate according to the laws and Great Tao. Won't they repel each other? Jiang Tian was helpless. You're still the same as in your previous life. You're like a curious baby with a lot of questions. Gu He didn't think too much and was full of praise. Senior Tai Xuanzi, is this the legendary demonic seed of the Taoist heart? It's incredible. It has many wonderful uses. Unfortunately, it's too late. Although he had obtained the second god, Jiang Tian still smiled bitterly and looked up. Outside this spatial fragment, thunderclouds covered an area of 30 million miles, covering half of the sky. It was boundless and endless. Chaotic lightning dragons rotated and jumped in the thunderclouds, appearing and disappearing. Each lightning dragon shone with different colors, representing different attributes of divine thunder. They were tens of thousands of feet long, or even hundreds of thousands of feet long. Jiang Tian knew. The moment the thunderclouds completely condensed. It was when the thunder tribulation fell. And because he forced the god to fight until the end, this world finally sensed the existence of this new god. The thunder tribulation was unavoidable. Phew, I've gained a lot from this battle, but the losses are too heavy. Jiang Tian let out a long breath. This battle had almost completely shattered his god body. If he couldn't find divine herbs, divine trees, and divine materials, he would have to spend countless times more effort to recover. Especially now, when the lightning tribulation was about to arrive. Even if Jiang Tian was unwilling, and he didn't have enough materials, he could only brace himself and transcend the tribulation. Jiang Tian's original idea was to hide in the space fragment of the demonic world and refine the devil's claws to form the second god. That way, he could avoid the perception of heaven and earth, and he would not need to go through the ordeal. Moreover, he did not need to worry about the one above the ninth heaven discovering his fantasy. However, even if my original deity fails to pass the tribulation and is reduced to ashes, I'm not afraid. After all, I have already obtained the second god, and he can completely support my strength. It's just that I'm afraid I'll have to walk a completely different path of devil cultivation. Jiang Tian shook his head. He was a person who never regretted his decisions once he made them. Moreover, the condensation of a god was not impossible to regret. There were still many great medicines in the 9 immortal sects area that could be used to refine deities. In his previous life, Jiang Tian, who had once run amok in all the realms, naturally knew a few methods to condense one's soul again. Boom! Jiang Tian opened his divine treasure and let Huang Linger out. He was about to pass the ordeal, and it might be even more dangerous than the battle with the demonic emperor. The divine treasure was already the most dangerous place, and it might be shattered into pieces. Huang Linger would be affected. When Huang Linger saw that Jiang Tian was so badly injured, she could not help but shed tears and was full of worry. Her endless concern was expressed without words. Crack! Jiang Tian carried the demonic sword that was more than 10 feet long and swayed with each step. He descended from the void and landed on a demonic mountain. He stepped on the mountain peak, and if not for Huang Linger supporting him, he would have staggered and fallen. At this moment, the terrifying ancient demonic sword Qi was still wreaking havoc in Jiang Tian's body, and Jiang Tian happened to be in an unprecedented period of weakness. At this moment, Jiang Tian's divine treasure had collapsed, and his deity was also full of cracks and almost burned through. There was not much origin left. At this moment, Jiang Tian's combat power was probably not much stronger than Gu He's. Protect me. I need to quickly recover my Dharma power and pass the thunder tribulation in my peak state. Jiang Tian stabbed the demonic sword into the ground beside him. Then, he sat cross-legged on the mountain peak, ordered Tai Xuanzi and Gu He, and quickly sank into cultivation. Damn, this fellow cultivator, you really don't think of yourself as an outsider? Tai Xuanzi was confused. Are we that close? The girl in purple ran over and said with a smile, Grandpa, you called him a lunatic just now, but you don't think of yourself as an outsider. Maybe this is fate. Although Tai Xuanzi said so, he was actually very fond of talents, so he still focused on protecting Jiang Tian. Whoosh! After Jiang Tian condensed the Tao of Taotai with difficulty, a huge black vortex appeared behind Jiang Tian. Then, Jiang Tian took out the flaming red toad. As a quasi-immortal beast that could only live in places with abundant immortal qi and fed on supreme-grade spirit herbs, the toad on its body contained endless spirit qi, which could help Jiang Tian break through several levels. Originally, Jiang Tian planned to use it to help him break through 1 or 2 levels after reaching the soul formation realm. But now, in a hurry, he could only use it to heal his injuries and repair his god body. Jiang Tian's face was calm, and his eyes were firm. Then, the Tao of Taotai slowly swallowed the flaming red toad. The flaming red toad immediately melted and turned into endless immortal qi, which was sucked into Jiang Tian's body like a long dragon. Almost in the blink of an eye. Jiang Tian's aura quickly stabilized, and then began to gradually rise. Then, Alchemy Saint Gu He did not hide anything. He took out a large number of sacred pills from his storage Dharma treasure for Jiang Tian to refine. He took out all the treasures that the ancient medicine hall had accumulated for thousands of years, and this was all they had. Seeing this, Jiang Tian had mixed feelings. Actually, Pill Sage Gu he had a side that was afraid of death, but at this moment, he revealed his generous side. But this generosity was also shrewd. To him, this was a risky investment. If Jiang Tian could survive this, then when he returned the favor in the future, it would not be as simple as a pile of sacred pills. This is the complexity of human nature. Jiang Tian sighed in his heart, but he did not hesitate to refine the sacred pills that Gu He gave him. The sacred pills were inferior to the flaming red toad, but at least they were enough to fill one's stomach. As he refined and absorbed more and more pills, the chaotic divine light around Jiang Tian's body gradually became stronger, and soon, the ancient demon sword qi around his wounds was suppressed. His god body was also rapidly recovering. Seeing this, Tai Xuanzi's eyes flashed with relief, and he looked at the ancient demon army in the distance more vigilantly. At this moment, Jiang Tian was undoubtedly at his weakest. If the ancient demon army attacked and killed Jiang Tian at this time, it would be a disaster. He would live in guilt for the rest of his life. A celestial semi-god realm cultivator, and a second god for the first time. Such a genius would raise the nine-cloud continent to an unimaginable level, and bring endless blessings to the continent. Now, there were still 100,000 ancient demons, 7 or 8 demon generals, and a demon commander alive. Especially the silver-armored demon commander, whose strength was also very terrifying. Kill, avenge the demon emperor ancestor. Crush this little human worm. The demon generals obviously saw that Jiang Tian was weak. The silver-armored demon commander shouted, and the remaining ancient demons immediately rushed toward Jiang Tian like ants with monstrous killing intent. Chapter 2087. Ugly fiends, I'm here. You're digging your own grave if you want to hurt my friend. Tai Xuanzi's hair fluttered in the wind and he stared at the fiends coldly. He shot up to the sky and stopped the silver-armored fiend commander with his fists and feet. However, the other 7 to 8 demon generals and 100,000 demon warriors bypassed him and charged toward Jiang Tian like maggots in a corpse. While killing the silver-armored fiend commander, Tai Xuanzi yelled to Gu He, hurry up and protect him. But, Gu He looked at the girl in purple with concern. It wasn't that she was afraid of fighting, but that her level was too low. She was only a nascent soul cultivator and nobody was protecting her. Senior, I'm also a soul formation cultivator with a high quality. You protect the girl and I'll kill. Huang Linger was worried that the fiends would come and hurt Jiang Tian, so she shot up to the sky and ran towards the fiends. Linger, Senior Tai Xuanzi, come back now. Suddenly, Jiang Tian yelled. What? Does he have other trump cards even when he's in seclusion? Tai Xuanzi and Gu He were both startled and looked at Jiang Tian in disbelief. As expected. Clang! A crisp sound of a sword came up in the sky. The fiend's sword on the top of the mountain bounced up and turned into a sword aura, cutting a fiend general in half. Immediately after, the black hole behind Jiang Tian and the Taoyue's shadow expanded, becoming 100 miles wide. A terrifying suction force came from it. Countless demonic soldiers were sucked into the black hole like dumplings and were instantly destroyed by the black hole. Each of the ancient demons was a nascent soul cultivator. Their dharma power turned into streams of energy and was infused into Jiang Tian's body. It's a trap. A demon general's expression changed drastically as he shouted madly. This guy is too mean. He's already severely injured and he's still trying to kill us. The other demon soldiers also reacted. They could not help but cry for their parents. They wished that their parents had given them an extra pair of legs as they desperately ran away. However, how terrifying was the might of the Taotai Grand Tao. The devouring black hole was comparable to a black hole in the universe. It expanded again, covering an area of 3,000 miles. In the end, not only the 100,000 demon soldiers, but also the 8 demon generals were sucked into the cave and turned into life origin qi to replenish Jiang Tian's body. Patter. Gu He was so frightened by this scene that he fell to the ground and his legs went soft. As for the silver-armored demon commander, it roared and frantically flew out of the spatial fragment. It did not care if it could find the passage to the demonic world, nor did it care if it could survive the void storm with its strength. Who? How enormous was the essence of 100,000 nascent soul stage demons? Besides, there were some soul formation stage and void return cultivators among them. Jiang Tian's physical body recovered at a visible speed. In the blink of an eye, the sword mark disappeared. His divine body shone with a bright light as if it were made of divine gold. The cracks on his body disappeared completely and he quickly recovered to his peak state. The 9 divine-grade Grand Daos were formed in Jiang Tian's body again. Divine Emperor Gengjin, Tao Tai, Thunder Centipede, Xian Wu, Red Sparrow. Many avatars surrounded him. Those avatars were just illusions. Jiang Tian heaved a sigh and stood up slowly. His energy was unprecedentedly strong and was more powerful than Gu He's. It was comparable to Tai Xuanzi's. It was even comparable to the previous battle. His divine treasures had become even more solid and stable, as if he were a heavenly palace. His divine treasures had doubled in size, and in terms of magic power, he was now comparable to a pinnacle stage return to void stage being. However, Jiang Tian's face still showed a serious expression. Above his head, the terrifying lightning tribulation that covered an area of millions of miles finally descended. At this moment, all the beasts in the critical boundary canyon lay on the ground and didn't dare to make a sound. Gu He even knelt and bowed his head, both his soul and body were trembling. They felt as if the end of the world had come. Boom! Thunder rumbled and lightning dragons roared. Demon Divine Thunder, Jojua Divine Thunder, 5 Elements Divine Thunder, Destructive Divine Thunder, Metamagnet Divine Thunder. Dozens of divine thunders flashed in the thunderclouds. Each of the divine thunders represented an earth-shattering power. Once they fell, they could blast everything within 1,000,000 miles into pieces. This was the void outside the Saint Origin world. If it was on a continent, it would be able to penetrate the continent and turn all the planets with life into dust in an instant, exterminating all living beings. This isn't a thunder tribulation. It's an immortal tribulation. Gu He was scared out of his wits. He took out 23 lightning-repelling Dao tools and saint weapons in a row. Each one of them was extremely valuable and powerful. He raised his buttocks and lay on the ground, trembling. He had completely lost his former demeanor. Seeing how frightened Gu He was, Tai Xuanzi didn't mock him at all. Instead, he frowned and looked at the thunder tribulation in the distance. To be honest, as a saint on the continent of the 9 clouds, he had gone through countless thunder tribulations for soul formation cultivators. He had seen a lot. However, this was the first time he had seen such a terrifying thunder tribulation. This caused his heart to tremble and feel uneasy. Only Jiang Tian stood with his hands behind his back and looked at the sky. Fine, since the thunder tribulation is coming, I'll face it head-on. Even if I can't become a divine-grade deity, so what? I'll have a chance to make up for it in the future. Jiang Tian gritted his teeth and his eyes were as cold as steel. Roar! The true form of the first deity roared behind him and turned into a Dharma form. It looked like a deity had descended and was facing the thunder tribulation. It seemed to be attracted by the deity. Countless thunder dragons roared at the same time and quickly formed a lightning pillar that reached the sky and was about to strike. However, when the thunder tribulation was about to strike, bang! A throbbing like never before filled Jiang Tian's heart. Deep inside the tribulation, a brilliant immortal glow suddenly exploded in the boundless sea of lightning. It instantly penetrated Jiang Tian's body like a godly sword shooting at the sun. The moment Jiang Tian sensed the deity light, he was dumbfounded and full of disbelief. Why does it look like the deity light of the 9 heavens I saw when I went through the tribulation in my previous life? This was what Jiang Tian couldn't believe. In his previous life, he remembered that when he opened the gate of the deity world, the world he saw was filled with countless deity lights. That light illuminated the entire universe. It was boundless and endless, and it illuminated every single corner of the universe. It carried the aura of immortality, transcendence, and eternity. It was so supreme and supreme. Normally, when one wanted to become a deity and went through the tribulation, there would be a few strange phenomena. The first would be deity world in the sky, and 9 underworlds descending. This meant that an overlord had met the requirements of the deity world and was in the process of breaking through, but he might not succeed. The second would be when one went through the test and finally opened the gate of the deity world. According to the cultivation arts and nature of each person, the phenomena would be different, and there were many of them. There were flying snow of the 3 realms, dancing silver snakes, 9 suns rising, and merit prolonging life, and so on. If the second type of phenomenon appeared, it meant that the breakthrough was successful and a new deity would appear. As far as Jiang Tian knew, the second type of phenomenon was extremely rare. It showed that the person who broke through was powerful and special or had a lot of experience, such as 1,000 Buddhas welcoming, withering Bodhi, changing the sky, purple chi from the east, 10,000 years of golden light, and star fire. After completing the tribulation and becoming a member of the deity world, the third type of phenomenon would appear. It also varied from person to person. However, there were only a few types. The ordinary, greetings of the 10,000 realms, the outstanding, stars surrounding the moon, and the extremely powerful, sea of deity light. In short, the real deity light of the 9 heavens could only belong to the deity world. It was an extremely condensed high-level energy and would never appear in the world of cultivation. It was to be expected. Chapter 2088. What's going on? I'm about to go through a thunder tribulation. Why would the deity light of the 9 heavens fall on me? Isn't this a blessing that only happens after becoming a deity? Jiang Tian was shocked and confused. Could it be that the deity light of the 9 heavens would fall when a divine-grade soul formation cultivator went through a tribulation? Blessing? No way. The immortal monarch was a giant in the deity realm. If the deity realm were to send deity light of the immortal monarch, it would be approved by the immortal monarch. Then, the immortal monarch must have sensed his existence. Why would he give him a blessing and go easy on him? Would he just sit and watch his pawn grow stronger? Would he have a chance to get rid of his destiny? Or was the immortal monarch so arrogant that he could still kill Jiang Tian even if he became a divine-grade soul formation cultivator? In the time it took for a spark to fly, many doubts flashed in Jiang Tian's heart. But it was too late to think about it. Boom! Following a loud explosion, a pillar of lightning roared from the sky and descended from the sky. Generally speaking, the first lightning bolt of any lightning tribulation was the weakest. And yet, the lightning in front of Jiang Tian was as thick as 100 people hugging around it. It shone with golden light and lit up the critical canyon. It was as powerful as an attack from a void-returning saint. Oh my God! He was dumbfounded. That was only the first thunder tribulation and it was already so powerful. According to the usual practice of heavenly tribulations, the later ones should be more powerful. Even with his current strength, it would be difficult for him to withstand it. If he was at the soul formation level, he would have been turned into ashes by the first thunder tribulation. Great! Jiang Tian didn't hesitate anymore. He flew into the sky and took the thunder tribulation with his body. The thunder tribulation was both dangerous and an opportunity. It was born from the laws of heaven and earth and had the effect of tempering the body and training the deity. The reason why soul formation cultivators were called deities was that they had been tested by the laws of heaven and earth and were recognized by their parents. If they didn't go through the thunder tribulation, no matter how powerful the deities were, they would be weaker when it came to using the power of heaven and earth. Boom! The terrifying 5-colored heavenly lightning struck Jiang Tian's body. Jiang Tian didn't even tremble. Tiny electric sparks danced in every corner of his body, every muscle, and every bone. They refined his body from the inside out. Jiang Tian took this opportunity to activate the Transcendental 9 transformation technique. With the help of the heavenly thunder, he gradually forced out the impurities brought by the 100,000 warriors of the ancient demon clan. Tsk. Wisps of demonic black smoke emerged from Jiang Tian's body like dragons and snakes. After expelling these impurities, Jiang Tian's body became even more dazzling, like a sparkling and translucent diamond. However, an even more shocking scene occurred. Streams of demon chi that were like smoke signals were originally soaring into the sky, but they suddenly turned around and bent like tentacles and demonic dragons, rushing towards Jiang Tian's divine treasures. This. Could it be the backlash of the demonic chi? Wouldn't that lead to chi deviation? Seeing this, Gu He was shocked. He was very worried and wanted to soar into the sky to stop the demonic chi. Wait! Tai Xuanzi reached out to stop him. Senior. Gu He was confused. Tai Xuanzi put one hand behind his back and stroked his beard with the other. He said calmly, "He's already a fiend. Why are you afraid that he'll become a fiend?" As he spoke, a trace of amazement flashed in his eyes as he looked at Jiang Tian. Gu He suddenly understood and was shocked. A fiend and a god, one positive and one negative. Two gods really have endless uses. It turned out that Jiang Tian's fiend emperor was absorbing the devil chi and laws to strengthen himself and increase his strength. This was too wonderful. Ordinary people, even if they had unparalleled deity arts and could absorb some of the laws and essence in the devil chi, there were still many impurities after all. They had to be wary of the backlash of the devil chi at all times. However, Jiang Tian had a fiend seed in his heart and two gods. Why would he be afraid of the backlash of the devil chi? I'll take as much as you give me. Boom! Jiang Tian's divine treasures shook. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Bright and mysterious rays of light shot straight to the sky. However, the instant it dimmed, 90% of the lightning was instantly absorbed by the two deities within Jiang Tian's body. So powerful. At this moment, Gu He was dumbfounded. The two gods in Jiang Tian's body were extremely heavy and connected with the world. The endless laws of the world resonated with them and let out waves of sounds. No, he even felt that the entire vast universe was connected with Jiang Tian's two gods. It's the help of the deity light. Tai Xuanzi's eyes shone like torches as he carefully examined Jiang Tian's divine treasures and said. After the fierce battle, Jiang Tian's divine treasures had collapsed and almost turned into ruins. The gods were almost burned through and their origin energy was almost exhausted. Jiang Tian had used the blood of the fiends, the fire-red toad and the elixirs given by Gu He to recover to the peak, but after all, he had just recovered and didn't have time to settle down. But at this moment, the strands of celestial light from the 9 heavens coiled around the bodies of the two gods. It was like the 9 heavens had blessed them, and it slowly fused into them, causing them to become incomparably heavy and firm. Tai Xuanzi was sure that without the help of the deity light of the 9 heavens, Jiang Tian wouldn't have gone through the tribulation so smoothly. Come on. At this moment, Jiang Tian looked up at the sky. His sharp eyes seemed to be able to penetrate the dimensional storms and layers of the universe to see the high and eternal deity realm of the 9 heavens. After Jiang Tian said that, an earth-shattering sound that shook the entire fragment and even the entire planet region of Saint Origin was heard from Jiang Tian's divine treasures. Come on. One of the voices was in the deity language of the 9 heavens and the other was in the fiend language of the 9 underworlds. They were created by the two gods and they were mixed with a sense of holiness and depravity. However, Tai Xuanzi felt a sense of unyielding will. No matter where they came from, they only wanted to be powerful. Boom! Unyielding to the heavens, unyielding to the earth, unyielding to the immortals, unyielding to the devils, unyielding to the heavens, unyielding to the earth, unyielding to the immortals, unyielding to the devils. Bang! Even though Tai Xuanzi was one of the leaders of the 9 celestial sects, he still felt a terrifying pressure. Swish! He waved his sleeves and retreated tens of thousands of miles with everyone. He waved his hand and 8 supreme-grade sacred weapons let out beams of light, forming a light shield that covered everyone. Crack. Whoosh. Strange sounds were heard. The first layer of light shield was formed by the fragments of the Grand Tao and laws. It was extremely heavy and could withstand the full-powered attack of a Void Return Saint, but it was immediately torn apart. At the same time, the sacred weapons and Dharma artifacts that created the light shield dimmed and shattered. Crack. Crack. The other two shields were also barely holding on. They were like thin films in a storm, in danger of being torn apart at any moment. Has this guy cultivated into a god, or has he condensed the void sky? Why is he so terrifying? Seeing this, even Tai Xuanzi was shocked. Soul formation cultivators were gods in the human world. Even if they completed the tribulation, they would only be recognized by the world and punished on behalf of heaven to rule the world. In short, he had been recognized by the parents of the world, like the Son of Heaven and Earth in the human world. At the end of the day, the power of a god was limited by the world. And yet, he felt that Jiang Tian's god had a sense of pride, as if he were above the world and could trample the entire universe under his feet. As the god roared, the world seemed to be enraged and the second bolt of lightning struck. Chapter 2089. In fact, it wasn't the second bolt of lightning. The second wave was more accurate. Boom! Boom! 81 bolts of lightning fell from the sky in a row. Each beam was thicker and brighter than the last. In the end, it almost turned into a dazzling pillar of light that supported the heavens and shook the earth. It was as thick as 1,000 people hugging it, and it smashed down from the sky like a sea-stabilizing needle. It was comparable to the combined attack of several cultivators at the Return to Void Pinnacle stage. However, Jiang Tian stood proudly in the air, using his physical body to take it head-on, not falling at all. In the end, the 81 bolts of lightning were completed. Even the thunderclouds in the sky paused slightly, as if they were stunned. That's terrifying. Gu He lay next to him. Even Tai Xuanzi's eyes widened and he couldn't stop gasping. The little girl next to him even asked if he had a toothache. No wonder Tai Xuanzi was shocked. The soul formation stage thunder tribulations were based on the cultivation level of a god. There was only one first-grade god. There were only 9 ninth-grade gods. There were countless gods above the supergrade, but there were rarely more than 3 or 4 9-grade gods. However, Jiang Tian had gone through 81 bolts of lightning, which was even more terrifying than an immortal grade god. More importantly, Jiang Tian had gone through the tribulation too easily. Even the legendary supergrade, sacred grade and immortal grade prodigies of the 9 celestial sects had to be very careful when going through the thunder tribulations. They had to activate many arrays or use the secret treasures of their sections. There were many peerless prodigies who had died in the thunder tribulations. It was unheard of for Jiang Tian to go through the thunder tribulations as easily as eating and drinking. He must be the reincarnation of an old monster or a heavenly lord. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so powerful. Gu He thought to himself. Boom! However, the thunder tribulations didn't stop. Instead, they became even more intense. One after another, thunder dragons roared and flew in the thunderclouds. Each of them was 1,000 feet long and shone with different lights. In the end, the innumerable lightning dragons gathered together and transformed into a mountain of green lightning the size of a mountain. It crashed down from the sky like a meteor crashing into the earth. The power of this attack was many times stronger than before. Tai Xuanzi was horrified. He felt that he might not be able to withstand it. In the face of this calamity, Jiang Tian's expression became serious for the first time. He took it seriously. Bang! Jiang Tian's figure swayed a little when he was hit by the green lightning mountain. But it was just a slight sway. Within the divine treasure, the Chaos 9 Orifice God, who was also a master god, had even more devil chi refined by the green lightning. But more importantly, these demonic chi laws and great Daos were strengthened by the prison-suppressing fiend emperor beside him. Again! Jiang Tian shouted. It seemed to respond to his voice. Another 8 bolts of lightning struck down from the sky. None of them were much weaker than the previous ones, and in the end, they were all comparable to the attacks of Tao integration stage super mighty figures. Even with Jiang Tian's powerful physical body, it was impossible for him to take it head-on. In an instant, his flesh was torn open. One by one, his muscles exploded, revealing his bones that were as clear and translucent as green jade. He's cracked. Gu He panicked and heaved a sigh. He didn't feel good at all. He no longer had the demeanor of a mighty figure like he used to. I've already contributed all the sacred pills and divine medicines I have. If this kid dies, then wouldn't all my risk investment be gone? Don't worry. Tai Xuanzi rolled his eyes at him in disdain. Sigh, the Saint Origin world is really bad. You're the leader of the Saint Alliance, yet you're so weak. This kid has a special constitution and strong recovery ability. Besides, his divine treasure is thick and his body isn't destroyed. Is it a problem if his body is destroyed? Tai Xuanzi said patiently. The Chaos 9 Orifice divine body was indeed powerful. Jiang Tian's chaotic 9 orifices deity released the natural laws. His flesh used this as his meridians and bones. In the divine lightning, he absorbed the surging spiritual energy and instantly recovered. Moreover, he was even more sparkling and resplendent than before, also more condensed and powerful. However, after this wave of lightning, the thunderclouds in the sky didn't disperse. Instead, they became more condensed. Thunder dragons rolled and roared, showing their ferocity. They turned into chaotic thunderballs and hovered in the void, as if they were preparing for the strongest attack. Wait, why is this guy still going through? Gu He found something wrong. Even if he's a deity, he should have finished it. Not only him, but even Tai Xuanzi was completely confused at this time. They originally thought that Jiang Tian was condensing a deity. Jiang Tian's strength should be a deity after he killed the devil's claws. But now, after the 81st lightning tribulation, another wave came, and there was no sign of it stopping. Could it be that the deity he condensed is a new one? But since ancient times, I've never heard of a deity that is stronger than a deity. Not only Gu He, but even Tai Xuanzi was completely dumbfounded. He pulled out the beard on his chin, but still couldn't figure out why. But at this time, the lightning tribulation had arrived. Boom! This wave of lightning was much more powerful than the previous one. Dozens of thunder dragons condensed into a colorful thunder ball and smashed down from the sky, containing a destructive aura. Many thunderbolts converged and turned into an unimaginable attack. The power of this attack was comparable to that of the devil's claws. It was enough to turn hundreds of miles into powder. Thunder and lightning fell, drowning the mountainous region. A vast and boundless ocean appeared. Tai Xuanzi had no way to retreat. He flashed out of this space fragment and came to the space storm. Yes, in his view, this wave of lightning tribulation was far more terrifying than the space storm. He sat cross-legged on a metal compass. This compass was filled with images of stars. It was a spatial treasure. He traveled across the star area on this treasure, which had the power to resist the space storm. Crack! Crack! Huge electric light rushed out of the space fragment's boundary gap, like a dragon soaring to the sky. This was a vast tribulation of heavenly lightning, causing people to tremble in fear. The sea of lightning was boundless, filling the entire critical space fragment. A bolt of lightning burst out and turned a mountain into ashes. It was extremely fierce. Everyone was terrified. Huang Linger clenched her fists and her body trembled. She was full of fear. She was very worried about Jiang Tian. With so many furious lightning bolts, what kind of terrifying might would they possess? If all of them were to descend, this fragment of space would shatter and cease to exist. This is the most terrifying heavenly tribulation of a deity-level soul formation cultivator. It's only recorded in some ancient books in the celestial sects. Tai Xuanzi's eyes popped out. He thought Jiang Tian's god was a deity-level god, because the most powerful god in the current records was at that level. This is not an ordinary heavenly punishment. It's rare even in the 9 celestial sects. Something strange will happen. Anyone who goes through this kind of tribulation is a cultivator envied by the world. The world has sensed your power and thinks you'll be able to suppress the world one day. Tai Xuanzi explained. Why was Jiang Tian's heavenly tribulation so serious? At this moment, the girl in purple suddenly let out a cry of surprise and widened her eyes. Grandpa, look, there's something in the sea of lightning. It looks like a building. Everyone looked over with rapt attention. Each and every one of them was dumbstruck and shocked. Countless palaces seemed to have condensed in the sea of lightning, forming a continuous stretch. They carried a lofty charm, arrogance, and indifference, and were even more eternal and unmoving than the heavenly Tao. Is that the heavenly court of the deity realm in heaven? Even Tai Xuanzi was startled. He looked extremely serious. This is the heavenly tribulation of heavenly tribulations. Chapter 2090. This kind of thunder tribulation was extremely rare and looked very evil. The grand palace was completely formed from the essence of lightning. It was crystalline, translucent, blazing, and dazzling to the point one couldn't look directly at it, and it possessed a powerful imposing aura as it floated within the terrifying sea of lightning. The palace was sacred and solemn, but it was also full of terrifying destructive power. It's not the 9 heavenly courts, but an ancient heavenly court. It should be one from the ancient chaos era. Jiang Tian looked up and frowned. The 9 heavens deity realm wasn't always stable. There were changes in history, especially in the ancient chaos era, when the deity emperors of different worlds appeared. At that time, many deity emperors were born and died. There were wars everywhere in the deity realm and countless universes were destroyed. Jiang Tian ascended to the deity realm 500 years after his previous life, so he naturally knew that the 9 heavenly courts weren't like this at all. He had also read some ancient records. When a divine-grade deity went through the tribulation, they had to fight with the ancient heavenly courts or the incarnations of the deity emperors. However, there were very few records, and they were also very vague. They seemed to be right but were actually wrong. But he had never experienced it himself in his previous life, so he wasn't sure about it at this time. In short, the path of divine-grade deity and the path of postnatal deity were rarely taken. Everyone was terrified. In the endless lightning, ancient buildings appeared one after another. They were all formed by lightning and were bright and crystal clear. Now, they were forming layers of palaces and gradually forming a complete heavenly court. That terrifying destructive power was accumulating and waiting to be unleashed, causing one's heart to palpitate. It was so oppressive that it was hard to breathe. The heavenly tribulation hadn't struck yet, but it seemed to be gathering power and waiting to unleash the most terrifying attack. Tai Xuanzi looked worried and his face was solemn. He didn't have much confidence in Jiang Tian anymore. He was worried that when the final attack came, it would be earth-shattering and have the power to destroy everything. Jiang Tian was in danger this time. He had already activated the rapid space travel array on the metal compass, which could achieve interstellar jumps. If Jiang Tian was destroyed by the thunder tribulation, they would also be in danger and must run away immediately. Boom! The lightning struck the heavenly court as if the heavenly court had collapsed. Jiang Tian was directly smashed down from the sky, falling over 100 meters. Countless muscles all over Xiao Chen's body were torn apart by the lightning. The wound that had healed was torn apart once again. Only cultivators at the pinnacle of the return to void stage, or even Tao integration stage true immortals, would be able to withstand such a terrifying attack. Jiang Tian's divine body was still young after all. However, it was beyond Jiang Tian's expectations. This palace-shaped lightning was once again absorbed by Jiang Tian's divine treasures. The divine treasure had a hint of the sacred aura of the heavenly court of the 9 heavens, as if it was high and mighty, eternally immovable. Next, the thunder heavenly court seemed to be enraged. Each one was stronger and more ferocious than the last. Palaces and all kinds of buildings made of divine lightning came crashing down on Jiang Tian. But Jiang Tian had withstood it. In the end, it even transformed into an immortal emperor's throne that crushed the void and shattered the demonic land. It carried a majestic aura that could suppress the myriad of worlds and dominate all living beings as it smashed down towards Jiang Tian. It's comparable to a strike at the return to void pinnacle stage. Jiang Tian's expression was unprecedentedly solemn, and his gaze was stern. This strike was already comparable to the full-power strike of a cultivator at the return to void pinnacle stage. Even the devil's claws appeared dull and dull in the face of this strike. This was a terrifying power that only a cultivator at the return to void pinnacle stage could unleash. Even though he was already outside the spatial fragment, he was still scared out of his wits. He lay on the compass, trembling. The divine treasures in Jiang Tian's body seemed to have also been stimulated by the aura in the sky. The two gods roared into the sky, and boundless great Tao and laws surged out, enveloping Jiang Tian's body and forming a domain. A divine-grade domain. The divine-grade laws were mighty and surging, and the divine-grade great Tao carried with it an eternal aura. It was going to hold up the sky for Jiang Tian and take the strike of the immortal emperor's throne head-on. Jiang Tian had a slim chance of surviving this last lightning tribulation. Boom! Under the attack of the immortal emperor throne, the primal chaos divine body was instantly submerged in the destructive lightning. His physical body exploded almost immediately, turning into countless translucent fragments of bones, covering a large area in the sky. It was almost impossible to recognize him. Only the divine treasures remained, shining with eternal and unwavering light, protecting Jiang Tian's god within. No! Behind him, Huang Linger burst into tears. She stepped on the compass and was about to rush into the spatial fragment. Little girl, wait, don't be rash. You'll die if you go in. Your Tao partner is still alive. Tai Xuanzi stopped her and tried to persuade her. As long as the divine treasures and the gods were still alive, there was nothing to be afraid of. Even so, Huang Linger couldn't help but worry, and her heart almost jumped out of her throat. Jiang Tian's tribulation was like a small boat in a storm, moving forward with great difficulty, and could capsize at any time. After a long time, the lightning finally passed. Only then did Jiang Tian activate a mystic technique and reform his divine body. Huang Linger couldn't help but mutter with tears in her eyes, "That's great. That's great." The sound of dragons and phoenixes resonated. Around Jiang Tian, divine phoenixes danced, true dragons circled, Qilins looked up at the sky, black tortoises stepped on the ground, and deities appeared one after another, dazzling and eye-catching. All kinds of strange phenomena appeared. The gods spewed out immortal light and divine splendor, covering the sky and earth. Essence chi from all directions surged over like water, and the vast Tao and laws gathered towards his body, healing his wounds. Jiang Tian's body quickly recovered and swelled up. His flesh and blood shone with a crystalline luster, and his broken bones reconnected. His body was like seven-colored glass. This was the wonder of the 9 heavens' celestial light. It could instantly heal a person's flesh and bones. Jiang Tian suddenly became strong, and there was no longer a trace of defeat. Phew, it's finally over. Jiang Tian let out a long breath. 81 normal lightning tribulations, 9 deity-grade lightning tribulations, and finally, the heavenly court lightning tribulations that targeted divine-grade gods. In his previous life, when he reformed as a divine-grade god, there were only 25 lightning tribulations, and he had never encountered such a terrifying tribulation. I didn't expect it to be so powerful. Fortunately, with the help of the 9 heavens celestial light and the nourishment of the 9 heavens celestial chi, it survived the lightning tribulations. Now, it should belong to the second level of divine-grade gods. Jiang Tian looked at the bright and dazzling god treasure, and he was very satisfied. Just as he was about to rush out of the critical space fragment and come to the metal space compass to meet Huang Linger and Tai Xuanzi. Boom! The thin thunderclouds above his head that were gradually dissipating suddenly shook violently, and countless thunder and lightning roared. Jiang Tian looked up and was immediately stunned. He saw that in the 30,000-mile sea of thunder and lightning, the shadow of an immortal emperor formed by thunder and lightning was rapidly condensing. This thunder and lightning immortal emperor was majestic, and with a domineering aura that stood at the top of the universe, he stepped out of the heavenly court palace that was gradually fading away. He held a celestial emperor's sword in his hand and suddenly approached Jiang Tian. A humanoid lightning, tribulation. Seeing this, Tai Xuanzi was so shocked that he almost couldn't stand still. He was numb from the shock of Jiang Tian's lightning tribulation. Chapter 2091. The legendary humanoid thunder tribulation. Why does he have a weapon? At the side, Gu He cried out in shock. His voice was hoarse and filled with deep shock. He had read the ancient records and heard about it from the previous grand cultivators. There were only a handful of cultivators who could summon the humanoid thunder tribulation, even in the 9 celestial sects. The cultivators who survived the tribulation all became powerful beings in the end. They were very mysterious and might even become immortals. Even the ancient records were vague. This is the energy of a deity emperor. It's a tribulation from the 9 heavens deity realm, an ultimate test. Even Tai Xuanzi was dumbfounded. This was just his deduction, or his intuition, not an assertion. After all, he was only a void-returned saint and there was still a long way to go before he reached the Tao reunion level and the tribulation to become immortal. He had never seen a tribulation cultivator before. He was even further away from the 9 heavens deity realm. However, he had a feeling. It was a reverence that came from the bottom of his heart. It was like an ant looking up at a tall mountain. There was a sense of humility and insignificance. At this moment, he was sure that Jiang Tian was definitely a genius, one that might not appear even once in 10 million years, incomparably rare. They could only be born in the most dazzling and glorious golden era. Huang Linger and the purple-clothed girl also widened their beautiful eyes in disbelief. The humanoid thunder tribulation cultivator was as white as jade and was extremely sacred. However, his shoes and clothes were intertwined with 5-colored thunderbolts. The true dragon robe and the flat imperial crown were obviously the attire of an emperor. The sword was red, as if it was a sacred artifact of an ancient emperor. It was as if it was made of phoenix blood and red gold. It was dazzling and terrifying. All of this was beyond their knowledge and they couldn't understand it. The Sword Emperor. He was a powerful sword immortal in the deity realm during the chaotic antiquity era. He was invincible in his generation. This is the real tribulation of a divine-grade deity. Jiang Tian looked up with an extremely serious expression. But gradually, a smile appeared on his face. That smile became bigger and bigger. It was so bright, so carefree, and so proud. As far as I know, only a few people in the 9 heavens deity realm can summon the thunder tribulation of a deity emperor. Jiang Tian sighed with emotion. The lightning tribulation in the shape of a sword-wielding emperor was not natural. It was not a test of the heavens and earth. It represented the will of a great cultivator in the 9 heavens. In other words, it was from the 9 heavens immortal realm. It was an almighty expert from the immortal world who had intercepted the remnant soul of a fallen immortal emperor from the ancient chaos era and used heavenly lightning to mold his body into an immortal tribulation that descended from the 9 heavens. Even though it had only obtained a fragment of the immortal emperor's incomplete soul and used lightning as its body, its power was still comparable to a return to void stage Holy Spirit. In fact, it was one of the most powerful Holy Spirits and was comparable to a Tao integration stage perfected immortal. Master, is it you who wants to kill me? Jiang Tian's gaze seemed to have penetrated the immortal emperor's thunder tribulation, the thunderclouds, the spatial storms, the billions of planes, and the thousands of worlds. It was as if he was staring at the 9 heavens deity world that was enveloped in endless immortal light and suppressed everything. Hee hee. Jiang Tian looked at the resplendent world in the void and sneered. Since you've already sensed my existence, then let's see if you can kill me without coming in person. With a roar, Jiang Tian took out the myriad stone cauldron from his divine treasure to resist and at the same time to let it go through the tribulation and interweave the great Tao Dharma. This was the first time Jiang Tian had taken out the cauldron since he left Earth and went to the central galaxy. Because the immortal monarch had left the purple chi and the nine heavens true thunder in the myriad stone cauldron and the sky-severing sword. See chapter 1813 for details. The immortal monarch waved his hand and the myriad stone cauldron and the sky-severing sword were as good as new. The cracks disappeared and they flew to Jiang Tian. Only some purple chi and true thunder of the nine heavens deity realm were left, but their dharma powers were unaffected. Jiang Tian had stopped using them when he entered the Zhuma planet to avoid being seen by the immortal monarch. See chapter 1823 for details. But now, Jiang Tian was sure that his every move was under the immortal monarch's observation. He suddenly felt that it was boring, so he simply revealed his trump card. Boom! The sword-wielding immortal monarch Thunder Tribulation came quickly. He came with his sword but didn't attack first. Boom! He raised his gigantic palm, which had a radius of 1 mile, and slammed it down with a loud boom. In fact, even nascent soul and soul formation cultivators could easily perform such an attack, and it could even be 100 times bigger. The attack range of the immortal monarch Thunder Tribulation wasn't large, but its destructive power was astonishing. Suddenly, the world was torn apart, the dimension was shattered and chaotic storms surged. Before the giant hand arrived, the entire area within 1,000,000 miles was pressed down by dozens of feet. Countless demon mountains collapsed and a crack appeared in the entire critical space, running through the thick earth. Whoosh! Terrifying shockwaves mixed with lightning bolts tore apart the spatial barrier, causing the spatial storm outside to ripple. Boom! The metal compass was sent flying more than 10,000 miles away, like a small boat in a storm. You scared me. He was so scared that he was trembling. He lay on the compass and hugged the needle tightly. He couldn't even move his little finger. He felt that the end of the world had arrived. Facing this attack that could shatter stars and penetrate the earth, Jiang Tian's myriad creation would cauldron soared into the sky. His entire person seemed to have turned into a chaotic airflow. Facing the immortal monarch Thunder Tribulation, Jiang Tian had no choice but to advance. If he gave up, he wouldn't be considered to have passed the divine-grade heavenly tribulation. He wouldn't be the strongest cultivator in history and would have a loophole. Moreover, there was a legend that if you didn't kill the immortal monarch Thunder Tribulation, it would follow you forever. It would either attack or watch coldly. It would follow you even when you peed or pooped. Even if you used a mysterious deceptive technique, you wouldn't be able to hide it. Just thinking about it sent chills down one's spine. Boom! The two collided fiercely, no different from a battle between real people. It was as if the immortal sword forged from phoenix blood and scarlet gold possessed endless power. A single strike produced great Tao and natural laws, moreover immortal grade, incomparably vast and surging. The sword-wielding great emperor made of lightning could also use immortal power. Even Jiang Tian was shocked. How could this be? He was extremely shocked. This was a terrifying confrontation. Jiang Tian seemed to be resisting the heavenly tribulation, but in fact, he was experiencing a life-and-death battle. The opponent's strength was very strange. Although it had a body of lightning, it had inherited the cultivation method and divine powers of the sword-wielding immortal monarch. Its combat power was unparalleled. Even if Jiang Tian used all his strength, he could only be evenly matched. This battle was particularly tragic. Let's fight. Sacrifice this to my sacred cauldron. Jiang Tian vaguely sensed something. He suspected that the immortal monarch was going easy on him. When he took away Qinger, he left behind a boat so that he could cross the Sea of Stars. The purple chi and other things he obtained were also beneficial to his cultivation. This time, whether it was the nine heavens immortal light or the immortal emperor-shaped thunder tribulation, they seemed to be tempering his body. Although this thought appeared, Jiang Tian still pressed forward. He used the myriad stone cauldron to resist, fighting against the sword-wielding great emperor and the crimson immortal sword. After an unknown amount of time, another ancient heavenly court with a completely different style appeared. Another immortal monarch of the ancient chaos era flew out. It was still condensed by lightning. Above his head, there was an ancient mirror floating and condensing with nothingness. A thunder tribulation formed by immortal monarch Lan Jing. Damn it, there's more. According to this situation, will a group of ancient chaos emperors come to besiege me? Jiang Tian complained incessantly. Chapter 2092. The chaotic ancient era was a very chaotic era. Many emperors and celestial kingdoms existed side by side. It was like the 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms of the ancient Xia or the French Revolution. In short, there were many immortal emperors in that era. There were dozens of recognized immortal emperors. Therefore, the immortal emperors at that time had simple names, such as Sword Holder, Mirror Catcher, Mountain Breaker, and so on. They were a bit like mortal nicknames. If so many lightning tribulations in the form of immortal emperors came together, Jiang Tian was worried that he would not be able to handle it. Now, one sword immortal emperor was enough to tire him out. He was not fierce in the battle and was covered in blood. He was almost killed several times. However, it was strange. The humanoid lightning tribulations were very strange. One of them was similar to his strength and was evenly matched. The other 2 were the same. They did not surpass him or crush him, but they were not weaker than him either. They maintained a subtle balance and forced him to use his potential. He was tempered, but not to the point of being in a desperate situation. At this moment, Jiang Tian was even more convinced that all of this was the immortal emperor's mercy. He was deliberately tempering himself and sharpening himself. He even hoped that he could comprehend the laws and principles controlled by the immortal emperors in this lightning tribulation. If this inference is true, then there will be a 3rd lightning tribulation. Jiang Tian had just thought of this. Sure enough, the 3rd lightning tribulation appeared. A humanoid lightning tribulation did not wear an emperor's crown. His hair was messy and he was not wearing a luxurious robe. He was not wearing a luxurious robe, but a beast skin coat. He was holding a struggling true dragon in his hand. He had a domineering aura and swaggered barefoot. Immortal Emperor Fu Long. This immortal emperor's attack power was unparalleled. His physical body was number 1 and his close combat skills were very strong. He swung the true dragon and swept Jiang Tian like a giant whip. Suddenly, heaven and earth collapsed and space collapsed. The peerless power could split mountains, rivers, sun, and moon. Jiang Tian resisted with all his strength. He was bathed in blood and fought in the sea of lightning, fighting the 3 humanoid immortal emperors. Although they were made of lightning, they were no different from high-level cultivators. They could drive the Tao and use the laws. This was a battle of life and death. It was extremely dangerous. He could not afford the slightest bit of carelessness. One wrong step and his life would be ruined, and he would immediately die here. His strength has always been on par with mine, not exceeding mine. Is he going easy on me? But it could also be a surprise attack. Jiang Tian was bewildered. In the end, the battle continued for an entire day and night. Jiang Tian's myriad origin cauldron was almost pierced through. Chaotic blood splashed out from his body as he suffered heavy injuries. Boom! With a final loud bang, the lightning that filled the sky disappeared. The 3 of them turned into scattered lightning and returned to nothingness. Heaven and earth regained its clarity. Jiang Tian's joints moved as his flesh recovered. Sounds continuously rang out, and his entire body was like divine gold, releasing extraordinary splendor and resplendent light. At the same time, the myriad stone cauldron also vibrated continuously. The patterns engraved on it interweaved like dragons, making it seem as if it had a life of its own. It was also refined, becoming even more pure. When Jiang Tian was about to leave the space that was riddled with holes and was on the verge of shattering, Jiang Tian suddenly stopped. All of a sudden, the lightning clouds in the sky rumbled and formed another 9 heavens ancient heavenly court. Great Emperor Mountain Crumbling. Immortal Emperor Chihu. Immortal Emperor flower plucking, the corner of Jiang Tian's mouth twitched as he saw another 3 Immortal Emperor lightning tribulations walk out from the Thunder Heavenly Court and surround him. After another day of battle, Jiang Tian broke the lightning tribulations of the 3 Immortal Emperors. However, this time, Jiang Tian's injuries were lighter, and he fought more easily. He had the upper hand. Moreover, he had a deeper understanding of the great Tao and laws controlled by the 3 Immortal Emperors, as well as his own heaven and earth. When the 3 Immortal Emperor lightning tribulations and the Thunder Heavenly Court dispersed, boom! Another immortal palace formed in the sky, and another 3 Immortal Emperor lightning tribulations descended. Again. Outside the critical space fragment, Guhi leaned on the compass without a care for his image. He glanced casually, sipped his immortal tea, and yawned loudly. "Senior Pill Saint, you're not nervous anymore?" The purple-clothed girl teased. Guhi assumed the demeanor of a Pill Saint and snorted proudly. "When has this old man ever been nervous?" "Cultivator Jiang, I'm already numb from winning. How can I be nervous? This time. Even faster." In just half a day, Jiang Tian passed safely. In the end, everything was over. Although the heavenly tribulation was terrifying, it didn't fall completely. It only drowned Jiang Tian, but it didn't break the space fragment. Boom! After a while, Jiang Tian let out a beam of light that penetrated the sky and the earth. His body was clean and flawless, he had completely recovered and returned to his peak state. Everything passed. The human-shaped lightning tribulation was completely wiped out. Jiang Tian reached a higher level, passing the trial, crossing the tribulation, advancing into the deity transformation realm, obtaining the support of heaven and earth. Every move he made was filled with boundless power, the great Tao following him, inexhaustible. His black hair danced in the wind. Jiang Tian stood in the sky and glanced around energetically. Suddenly, a wisp of Dharma laws flowed out naturally and pressed Pill Saint Guhi to the ground. Did this guy become a soul formation cultivator or a void return cultivator? Why is he so terrifying? I can't even withstand a little bit of his Dharma laws. Pill Saint Guhi wondered if he was a fake saint. Why couldn't he withstand Jiang Tian's energy? At the same time, Jiang Tian closed his eyes and started to check the results of his cultivation. He scanned his immortal will, his sea of qi, his divine treasure and his limbs and organs. After a while, Jiang Tian slowly opened his eyes with joy in his eyes. If we're talking about the soul formation level in the human world, then I've officially entered the soul formation level. I've formed 9 divine laws at the same time and become a divine grade god. Even in the legendary deities or the deity realm, I'm considered a peerless talent and a strong foundation. Not to mention the 9 celestial sects and the universe in the human world. Jiang Tian thought. At the moment, his divine body, divine soul and divine body had all reached the soul formation level. Moreover, all of them were at the highest level of the divine grade. Immortal cultivators in the human world usually focused on one kind, qi refinement, body refinement and soul refinement. After all, not many people could take care of all 3 at the same time and cultivate to the peak level at the same time. Normal ancient sects and dynasties wouldn't do something so extravagant. Not even the top 9 celestial sects or the ancient sacred grounds had such a foundation. Only the core forces in the deity realm had the chance to do so. I've already crushed all the geniuses in the world by forming a divine grade god. My foundation is extremely strong. Other than the powerful physiques passed down from the deity realm in 9 heavens, almost no one has a stronger foundation than me. Besides, my soul energy and soul power have also reached the divine grade soul formation level. Jiang Tian looked a bit smug. He remembered that he had once seen a passage of words on a majestic ancient tablet in a plain close to the divine world. It described the levels of cultivation in the divine world. One of the passages was still fresh in his mind. The so-called gods in the human world have their divine bodies, divine souls and divine bodies at the divine grade soul formation level. When the 3 are combined, endless divine power will burst out, as if a connate deity from the deity realm had come to the human world. The so-called power of one God refers to the power of a being from the God realm who has cultivated to the divine transformation realm and combined his essence, chi, and soul into one. In fact, the beings of the God realm use this as a foundation to create a set of rules that correspond to their power. A certain level has a certain amount of divine power. Chapter 2093. Of course. Power was just a number. In a real battle, there were thousands of changes and not just a few numbers could decide the outcome. Divine powers, dharma spells, treasures, arrays, spells, martial arts, and even battle awareness were the key to the final outcome. In terms of pure power, Jiang Tian was definitely not the one with the strongest power in his previous life, but he was the only one who had reached the top of the universe and looked down on thousands of worlds. However, the power of one God is indeed a basic qualification to be on par with the universe. Only with this power can one be considered to have a foothold in the universe and even be able to travel between worlds, and roam the chaotic space without being torn apart by a random space storm. It is said that in the celestial world, only with the power of one God can one be considered a true celestial and have the potential to live a long life, just like a mature beast. Jiang Tian pondered. The power of one God had many powerful divine powers and was far from a pure power index. In the description of the ancient tablet, there was only one sentence: cultivating the power of one God will allow one to fight against the Tao integration of the lower realms. Tao integration was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Even in his previous life, Jiang Tian had not dared to say that he could fight against a Tao integration perfected immortal after reaching the void return level. How terrifying would it be to be able to fight against a Tao integration perfected immortal with the power of one God? Of course, it was not a complete victory, but at least he had the chance to escape unscathed from a Tao integration perfected immortal, which was already incredible. Although Jiang Tian had become a divine-grade god and gone through the heavenly tribulation, he now had the ability to travel through the star sea and cross the boundary to reach the Saint Origin world. However, Jiang Tian still did not rush back to the Saint Origin world. He was still sitting cross-legged on the dark mountain rock, silently inspecting his body and recultivating his divine powers. The magical effects of a divine-grade god were beyond Jiang Tian's expectations. After all, even in his previous life, he had not reached such a level. At this time, from the Great Sun Furnace, to the 1,000 Lotuses, to the Hongmeng God-slaying Finger, the many magical powers that he had originally mastered, under the activation of a divine-grade god, all displayed completely different powers. Even the laws had a miraculous change, which made Jiang Tian click his tongue in amazement. This required him to reorganize and control it. At this moment, it was a completely different scene in Saint Origin World. Saint Origin World. It had been several months since the opening of the critical Grand Canyon. At this time, the critical boundary had completely left the Grand Canyon. The demonic chi had dissipated, and it was clear again. Between heaven and earth, there was a misty drizzle. Some lush green grass and wild flowers actually sprouted from the originally dry and withered land. There wasn't a trace of malevolence or evil. This was a plant that hadn't been demonized. In this Grand Canyon, it was very rare. There were even a few small animals that began to breed here. It was expected that in the future, there would be plenty of water and grass. It would be a blessed land. Not only that. Across the vast Saint Origin world, all the cracks that had been permeated by devil chi disappeared without a trace. Everything returned to normal. It was to the extent where even the demonic beasts no longer caused mischief, because the humans had repelled the demonic beasts. This made their hearts tremble, and also made them submit. On the evil-infested ridge, under a small tree, there was a handsome young man wearing a green robe. He was holding the hand of a 7- or 8-year-old girl. They quietly stood there and gazed at the critical canyon. Over there, it was just an ordinary canyon. Big Black, will my father come back today? Jiang Beibei's face was filled with melancholy. Her face was full of yearning. Her physique was strange. It was as if time didn't affect her body. She still had the appearance of a budding young girl. "Little mistress, master will definitely come back." Big Black's face was filled with determination. Jiang Beibei didn't say anything. She just glanced at the empty canyon with a melancholy gaze. Her big, watery eyes were filled with sparkling tears. "But we've already waited for 3 months. Big Black sighed and said in a low voice, "Little mistress, it's too late today. Let's go back to the academy. If we don't go back now, we will miss the evening classes. Eldest Princess Mo, you will also be worried." After the opening of the critical Grand Canyon, many sects of the Eastern Empire withered, and the Starfire Academy flourished. The eldest princess, Dongfang Moyu, had already found Jiang Beibei and sent her to Starfire Academy to cultivate, directly accepting her as a personal disciple. Every day, Big Black would bring Jiang Beibei to the critical Grand Canyon to wait for Jiang Tian's return. In fact, they knew that Jiang Tian had already entered the critical Grand Canyon and was unrestrained in the spatial turbulence. He was already dead. Even if he was lucky enough to survive, he might not be able to find a way back. Returning was not something that could be done overnight. But seeing how much the child missed and was attached to Jiang Tian, how could Big Black bear to break her dream? "Let's go. We'll come back tomorrow." Jiang Beibei was obedient in the end. She wiped her tears and nodded. "Let's go." Big Black chuckled. With a shake of its body, it transformed into a mighty purple jade qilin. It squatted down and carried Jiang Beibei on its back. He originally had the bloodline of the purple gold true dragon and had the 9 transformations. Now, as his cultivation increased, he had evolved from the big black dog form to a qilin. He was getting closer and closer to the true dragon form, and his strength was also getting stronger. "Aunt Qingjue, I'm going back to the academy. Do you want to go to the nearby town and buy some rouge and face powder?" Before leaving, Jiang Beibei looked at a lady sitting on the grass with her hands hugging her knees and asked softly. As the 9 Mysteries sect's holy maiden, Fairy Qingjue originally possessed a peerless charm that could topple cities. She was as beautiful as a fairy, but now, her face was covered with dust. It was obvious that she had been in the secular world for a long time. Her face was vaguely gloomy, as if she was worried about something. There was nothing she could do to avoid it. These days, every time Jiang Beibei came here, she would meet Fairy Qingjue, who was waiting for Jiang Tian's return. She even built a cottage here. It was obvious that she was going to stay here permanently. Every day, other than meditating, she would stare blankly at the canyon. Hearing Jiang Beibei's call, Fairy Qingjue came back to her senses. She smiled sadly and said, "Beibei, I'm not going. Then I'm leaving. Goodbye, Aunt." Jiang Beibei waved her hand. "Wait." Fairy Qingjue walked over slowly. With a wave of her hand, she took out a string of dazzling bells and reached out to touch Jiang Beibei's little face. Her eyes were filled with love and adoration as she said, "This is for you. Aunt, this is too precious." Jiang Beibei shook her hand, and a touch of emotion appeared in her eyes. After being by Jiang Tian's side for so many years, Jiang Beibei had a good eye for Dharma treasures. She could tell at a glance that this bell was a supreme treasure. It was made with the mystical, soul-stirring sonorous gold and other exotic treasured metals. It was embedded with countless precious crystals and carved with extremely high-level runes. It was definitely worth a lot. This is a soul-stirring bell. It's one of the 10 supreme treasures of the 9 Mysteries sect. When activated, it can separate the divine soul from the physical body of a cultivator below the void return level for a short period of time. No matter if it's used for self-defense or killing enemies, it's an excellent weapon. Fairy Qingjue helped her put the bell on her wrist and said gently, "There's another function. It has a trace of my natal spirit attached to it and is connected to my sea of consciousness. Once you're in danger, I'll be the first to know. Take it. I can't be by your side every day. I'll be more at ease if you wear this bell."